Hey folks, how's it going? This is Dominic Yip from Area 1. This week I'll be giving you a quick presentation on the fish of the week, kind of going through an interesting fish that we've caught last week, and we're going to do a bit of a deep dive today to walk through the actual fishing campaign itself. So let's start with the fish. So if we look at the fish here, this is an email that came from somebody who was trying to impersonate SunTrust Bank, requesting our victim to verify their account so they can continue to access their monies and access their bank account. Here the message was entirely trusted, came through trusted infrastructure. We've obviously obfuscated that to protect our customers here, but this is a great example of a certain degree of sophistication that some of these actors have are going through in order to be successful at their phishing campaigns. So what we're going to do today is deep dive into the whole mechanism behind this phishing campaign here and how it attempts to fool the user, and let's get started. So let's take a look at the email. So the email itself, pretty benign, looks pretty legitimate, fairly clean. It does have a link on it that tells you to go click here to basically access your account. And if we hover on this link, we see that it's actually pointing to a googleapi.com URL. So if you're not familiar with this googleapi.com domain, this is Google's cloud storage service. It's pretty widely used across the internet here. So in itself, it's pretty hard to block, because if you block it, you probably end up blocking a good chunk of content out there. So there's always some hesitation from different services to attempt to block this. So we're going to take a look here at the link. So let's start clicking on. Obviously we all trust Google. So if we take a look at the page, so I ran it through curl so we can see the code behind the page that comes back. Here we can see that the attacker used an open source tool to generate this redirection, and it's simply redirecting to this strataenterprise.com URL, which looks like, just by looking at it, you can probably tell that it's bad. But from a machine perspective, that's simply inspecting emails, right? The link that it's seeing here is that googleapi.com URL, and it will very likely let it through. So for the sake of this investigation here, let's walk through and render those pages and see what happens. So if I pop that URL in the browser, right, it comes back with a page that does look like SunTrust's page. It looks pretty legitimate. It uses the graphics, the logos are there. So let's compare it to the actual SunTrust page. And if you compare it, it actually does pretty look good. For a fake, I think it's a pretty good one. So now let's take a look at the details of that page. So we're going to take a look at the form. We're going to fill out the form and see where that takes us. So here, if we analyze the HTML of the page itself, we'll see that it's pretty boring HTML, but then there is this little piece of interesting code here, which is this JavaScript that basically uses encoded characters to basically obfuscate the action of the form here. So if we do decode that little string there, it gives us the HTML form tag that points to this zio.php script. So the moment I hit submit, that's what gets executed. So let's fill the form and see what happens. So here we filled out the form, right? So run it through again curl to see what happens. And and it forces you through another redirection, so that this time it's pushing you to this update.html page. So we're going to follow that, and let's see where it takes us. So the page that does come up here again is another SunTrust page, right? So these guys seem to be pretty serious about wanting to make sure they get your information. So again, they're asking you to revalidate information, provide more information. So they want to make sure that if they're going to steal your data, they steal it good. So here again, we're going to fill up this form, we're going to inspect that. So let's pull the HTML of the page, and here again we do see, very similarly to the previous page, boring HTML plus that URL encoded string there, which we decode again, and here it points us to this la.php form or script. So once we run that, we fill up the form again, quote, fill up the form, right? And here it finally does redirect you to a legitimate website, the SunTrust site's privacy resources, right? So, thank you for the information. Here's a page, to make you feel good that you did provide your information to the right entity, even though you did not. So here's the victim, right? So, or I guess the mule. So if we look at, this poor strataenterprise.com company, it looks like it's a company in India that is selling oil. I guess if I kind of browsed their site earlier, and it looks like they're selling coconut oil or sesame oil and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure it's a legitimate business out there, but unfortunately, their WordPress site got compromised here and ended up hosting this credential harvester. So why does this work, right? So as I mentioned, this attacker here, took advantage of this unpatched WordPress site, found a way to inject his code and kind of buried it down the directory structure. A benefit of the site that he's compromised was an e-commerce site, so they did have legitimate HTTPS certificates associated with the site. So again, from a user's perspective, makes it a little bit more legitimate. The little lock does show up on the top corner of your browser, and and the initial attack itself used this Google API.com service, to ensure that it can pass through many of the detection filters that email systems have out there. And then, again, because they are using this Google service, and they're using this redirection through this HTML and JavaScript code, they can easily rotate those sites as one gets compromised or gets discovered, they can just pop another one in there. So why does this work, right? So again, if we go back and we look at the email itself, we look at the pages that render both the initial login page and the revalidation page, everything looks pretty good. Very, we call those pixel perfect, which easily fools the eye. And also, from an emotional perspective, if you tell people, hey, you won't be able to access your money, you need to go do something about that, people will tend to want to do something, and there's a certain level of urgency around that, and that's definitely taking advantage of that emotional attachment here. So here, at Area 1 here, this was a, definite detection on our side. This was a, I like to call it an easy detection, right? We do a lot of advanced crawling and advanced scanning of the internet from our sensor network. That allows us to quickly identify phishing campaigns that are out there. And one thing I want to focus a little bit here that makes our technology a bit more interesting here is really those advanced detection technologies. So, our crawler is something that happens proactively on the back end, but we do have this technology incorporated within our email detection that allows us to quickly identify URLs that contains malicious content. So those URLs could be shortened, or they could be, in this case, hidden behind a bunch of redirects. So we will crawl those all the way to the end to find out, what's sitting behind those URLs. And once we identify those pages, we can run, some more sexy detections, things like computer vision, to determine, the logos that are showing on a page, and can we trust the page where these logos sit on. And finally, our backend technology uses all this data, and in combination with our threat research and the algorithms and machine learning models that we develop, allows us to more easily detect these sophisticated phishing campaigns. So I hope this information was useful to you guys. It's just a walkthrough of an interesting phishing attack that happened throughout last week. And, if you do have any information, please don't hesitate to contact us. And, we definitely want to stay ahead of these attackers and keep catching all this misfish. Thank you, and have a great day, and hope to catch you next week.